Since its inception in 1980, the Department of Education has come under attack from generations of Republican lawmakers who are ideologically opposed to the department's existence. The Trump administration has been the most aggressive in pursuing the department's closure. And now, thanks to the Supreme Court, the way is clear for Republicans to see their long dream fulfilled. Welcome to the politics of New America. On the show today, the Trump administration gets the green light to cripple the Department of Education, and then immediately starts gutting funding for school programs across America. I'm your host, Nathan Stone, and with me today is producer Josh Carmody.
I didn't realize that the Department of Education was so young. Does that mean it was started under, why did I blank on this? Jimmy Carter.
It was Jimmy.
Okay, I was going to say.
So it was pretty nascent when Reagan got into office, and he immediately campaigned on nixing the whole thing, and just never got enough support to do it. And then in the 90s, Newt Gingrich and the Republicans, when they controlled both houses, also tried to push for its elimination and failed. Of course, we had No Child Left Behind under Bush 2, which kind of, for a little while, changed the Republican stance on it. And then since the Trump administration has come in and then come in again, they have kind of been campaigning to close it. So it's really never been on stable footing, despite being, quite a bit older now, like 40 some odd years old as a department. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. Yeah. Carter signed it into law in 1979, the creation of this department. And then it actually kind of got wound up in 1980. Yeah. Josh, things are looking rough for the Department of Education right now.
Things are looking rough all over. The only thing anyone has to be happy about is watching a CEO get caught cheating at a Coldplay concert. It's the only thing bringing people joy and togetherness right now.
They should have just played it off. If they hadn't ducked. You can't duck and cover when you're just setting yourself up for people to ask why you're so shy. But that was a wild one. I feel like it's been less insane of a week than usual, but only like one step down. We still had a lot of fun and terrible stuff. Yeah,
they're kind of, the Trump administration's sort of on like a damage control run. Because of all this stuff going on where they're trying to ask people now to forget about the Epstein list or Epstein files.
Yeah.
Very, very strange time. Look, nothing takes down Donald Trump, as we've learned. So I'm certainly not going to get excited. I don't think there's any MAGA people who are turning their back on him. But I would say this, in terms of how they're floundering, is as close as Trump has gotten to a Watergate so far.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is of all the unforced errors of this administration and even his first administration, this one might be top of the list because you campaigned on the damn files. Did you not think that maybe when you cracked open that nice clean file folder, your name might be all over it? I don't know. But I might have checked first. But so on Monday, this past Monday, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the Trump administration can resume cutting staff and dismantling the Department of Education. There had been a preliminary injunction issued in May by a federal judge in Massachusetts, and that injunction had required the administration to halt layoffs and rehire 1,400 workers that they had. And so now that injunction has been lifted, we'll see those cuts continue. And the Supreme Court, like so many of these cases involving the Trump administration, isn't actually ruling on the case itself. So this is kind of similar to what we covered last week, where they lift injunctions that are stopping the administration, but they don't actually rule on the legality of what the administration is doing. So this cutting of the Department of Education will still probably end up at the Supreme Court at some later time. However, by that time, the department may be past saving, which would be the end goal of the Trump administration, win or lose that Supreme Court case. What they can, the damage that they can do is so great between now and when it actually makes it to the Supreme Court, that the Supreme Court's ruling this way or that honestly is not going to really matter at that point. It will to an extent, but as far as being a functional department, we're about out of time for that. But before we jump into kind of the news of the day, I did want to talk a little bit about the Department of Education historically, because I think for a lot of people, maybe my age and a little bit older, you think of the U.S. Department of Education and you're like, of course, they have a Department of Education. Every country has some kind of Department of Education, whether, regardless of what they call it. But as you said, it is a pretty recent thing. And the reason why it took them to 1980 to get this done is because mostly of the Confederacy.
God damn it.
Things in the United States.
It's the Supreme Court. If it's not the Supreme Court, it's the Confederacy. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. For an upstart secessionist state that lived and died in the span of half a decade or so, it's really messed things up for the United States ever since.
The crappy DC extended universe cinematic branch of films had a longer run than the Confederacy. I can name dumber stuff that had a longer run than the Confederacy.
Yeah, and the effort in 79 to create a Department of Education wasn't actually the first. All the way back in 1867, there was a very short-lived, lasted from 1867 to 1868, Department of Education, which was established during the Reconstruction of the South under President Andrew Johnson. Now, its creation reflected post-Civil War efforts to expand education, particularly for newly freed Black Americans. And that has really kind of stuck in the craw of the South almost ever since. And
I was going to say, yeah. Like, oh, there it is. Really burned their britches on that one.
Yeah. So it lasted one whole year before it was demoted to an Office of Education. Congress downgraded it to a sub-agency within the Department of the Interior, where it would remain for decades before just kind of dying out. Mm-hmm. Now, it did set a bit of a precedent for federal involvement in education, which would be important. So the Office of Education eventually evolved into the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare in 1953, and then finally its final form as the Department of Education in 1980.
Mm-hmm. Over 9,000, yeah.
Yeah. And so that 1867 effort was kind of a microcosm of what we would see in from the 80s onward, where Republicans have always argued that the Department of Education should not exist and does not need to exist. And the main arguments around this go to states' rights. Sometimes I'm just a broken record. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't always down to the Confederacy and states' rights, but this is the arguments. These are the things that have been coming up for 2 centuries, basically, of American history. And it's why you can't have nice things. But what's kind of important is that the modern day Department of Education was created with the goal of consolidating federal education programs, improving educational efficiency, and most importantly, ensuring equal access to education. That goes through, obviously, racial lines, disability lines, everything like that, right? That is really making sure that you cannot discriminate against children in terms of education. And they also work to enforce civil rights laws in education. And they focus on disadvantaged groups. And this is all things that, of course, Republicans traditionally oppose in any way, shape, or form the federal government doing. And in the United States, state and local school boards do the lion's share of education legislation and rules and regulations. Each state can kind of do education in its own way. But the federal department was brought in to kind of give them guidance and enforce those things that were so important that they couldn't be left up to the states. And so this is why, since its inception, it has come under attack, because there is the popular ideology within the Republican Party that any Washington interference in the states is bad, right?
And I don't want to sound like a broken record either, but this does go back to something that I talked about on the last episode, and that's that Republicans sort of see any kind of regulation as something to remove on the basis that, oh, well, no, it's in their best interest to work in this altruistic way without borders or guidelines. Mm-hmm. But they don't. They just don't.
Yeah, it's funny when I hear conservatives talk about, liberals or leftists, because they always conflate the two. But the idea of these utopian pie in the sky ideas that the left allegedly has. And then you get them talking about regulations and, the banks can regulate themselves. They wouldn't do anything dishonest. Industry can certainly regulate itself. We're all adults here. And to believe that, I think you have to be in far more of a utopian mindset than anyone on the left is in an average day.
So. Oh, yeah, no. Inside every conservative is a tiny little libertarian waiting for someone to take his garbage away and is getting eaten by a bear.
So, coming back to the modern day here, mm-hmm. The injunction that had barred the Trump administration from gutting the department is now lifted. So they're going to be doing that with extreme prejudice. Now the case is still working its way through the courts, and the Supreme Court's decision today goes against the 20 states, numerous school districts, teachers unions, that kind of brought this case forward, and the details around it and why this is being fought at all is it comes down to executive power versus congressional power, and this is something we've talked on the show about at length in various scenarios. This is another one. Basically, the executive, which is the president, his, the White House staff, everything that goes on there, they only have jurisdiction to say how federal departments can and will operate, right? So the executive acts as kind of the chief executive of each federal department, which means he can say, oh, these are our priorities. We're going to be, focusing on anti-DEI initiatives in schools or something. And that, while awful, is within executive bounds. What these states, the school districts and the teachers unions are arguing is that by firing and withholding funds from the Department of Education, the executive is overstepping its power, because that power, especially the power of the purse, is one we've talked about before here. So the power to spend money is congressional, not executive. So what they're saying is basically all of these things that the Trump administration is doing to the Department of Education to cripple it are illegal because the administration itself has no jurisdiction on whether or not that department should exist and whether or not that department should be funded. And honestly, they have a really good argument. Will they win? Knowing this Supreme Court, probably not. But
yeah.
From a constitutional standpoint, it does seem like an egregious case of executive overreach here. The executive cannot create or destroy federal departments. That's just not in the Constitution. Someone really should start reading that. But
yeah,
it's big. I'm sure they'll get to it. It's really long. The Supreme Court, when they did this, voted along the lines that they seem to always vote along now, which is the conservative justices agreed with it, the liberal justices opposed it, and Education Secretary Linda McMahon. I'm never gonna get used to saying that. I know they're trying to destroy the department, and then she would cease to be the education secretary, but Linda McMahon.
Oh, it's a hell of a last person. If the Department of Education is truly going to cease to exist during this term of that Trump has, and in the history books, it's like the last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Yeah, that's a true fall from grace there, for the Department of Education.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah. I mean, if in 50 years we get a huge collection of tomes, The Decline and Fall of the American Empire, I feel like that's got to be the very start of one of them, right? Like Volume 12, Linda McMahon, Education Secretary.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, and then she will have already come up before that because of all the times that Trump was on WWE and stuff. I mean, I think one of my favorite Trump WWE stories, though, is that they did a storyline where Vince McMahon gets into his limo and then the limo explodes and it's on fire, and they do a cliffhanger where, oh no, did Vince get killed? And Donald Trump called to ask if Vince was okay. So, I mean, this is a man who's had a tenuous relationship with reality for decades.
Well, I believe it was this week that when he was talking about the Fed chairman Powell, that he was surprised when he got.
I was surprised that he got appointed.
Yeah,
by you.
You were surprised.
You appointed him.
Yeah. Oh boy, that.
If he was quick, he could catch that one, though, because he'd be like, look, sometimes I surprise myself. And then all of his base would be like, oh, my God. Oh, my God. He's so beautiful.
I'm glad he didn't. The attack on the Department of Education this week has kind of come in two fronts. So, firstly, we had this... Oh, sorry, we were talking about Linda McMahon. I never actually made my point.
We can stick with Linda McMahon.
So Linda McMahon, somehow the head of the Department of Education, she has been claiming that the department's programs that they are supporting, the equality and access to education, she's saying that some of these programs misused funds to promote a, quote, radical left-wing agenda. The examples that she gave were immigration advocacy programs and LGBTQ initiatives, which both, of course, radical left-wing. You start with LGBTQ. The very next step is total communist overthrow. So, they were right on the doorstep there. But she has used this kind of continuously as justification for more and more of these cuts. And this week there was another big blow to the Department of Education and to every state basically in the union, because states, as we've said, manage the lion's share of educational responsibilities, but the federal government does give them a lot of money for programs, specifically really important programs, after school programs, meal programs, teacher training, English language programs, stuff that is fundamental for making sure that kids are successful.
Yeah, I mean, a constant criticism of public education is the lack of diversity in teaching methods. And a lot of what you mentioned in these programs kind of go in to help kids that need extra, guidance or to be taught in a different way that just does not fit or work with a teacher trying to already quell 35 students that are all beating the shit out of each other. So.
What a terrifying classroom that sounds like. Yeah, so the Department of Education basically released a memo saying that they are looking at scaling back $6 billion in congressionally approved funding. So again, this comes back to that separation of powers, right? This is funding that they already got from Congress. This isn't something that's tied up, JD has to come in at the last moment to push it over the edge for the Republicans in the Senate. It's none of that fake nonsense. It's actually like this is money they already had. They are going to withhold it, and because of that, there's going to be a lot of pain in the states, and especially in a lot of rural states, because the rural states are subsidized more heavily in terms of education per capita than the populous states. And so a lot of Trump's base, a lot of the Republican base here, stands to lose a lot of programs this September when schools come back in.
Which is pretty much for the course, everything that Republicans want to get rid of. The people who hurt the most are red states and rural states. You get rid of the U.S. postal system, like kind of far-flung, tiny, small areas aren't serviced anymore. You get rid of the Department of Education. Like, these places are already falling behind. So,
yeah. And so schools are going to have to cut staff or critical programs. Not so much kind of your teaching staff, more your support staff, right? Those people who allow kids with that may have special needs to be in class and to to give them that support. So it's always, of course, the most vulnerable that have their services cut first. But there are several legal challenges being kind of quickly put together here between the various state attorney generals and advocacy groups. However, like we've talked about last week, this week, and I'm sure in future weeks, these injunctions that the lower courts are able to do to temporarily stop these cuts are failing in large part because the Supreme Court is granting the administration kind of these they're basically emergency sessions where they make a decision. It's official, but it's not like one of their signed kind of, well thought out decisions that make up the majority of kind of what they do. These are almost kind of emergency, just stay of execution type of decisions where they are throwing out these injunctions. And unfortunately, there's no one to appeal to if the Supreme Court tells you no. So with these legal challenges, it is likely that they can get an injunction or a freeze that will stop, or sorry, in this case, restore that funding. However, if the Trump administration again appeals to the Supreme Court to fix this for them, and they do, then by the time it works their way through the system, all of these jobs are gone. All of this funding, the Supreme Court might hear this case in a year. And, this is stuff that's going to affect people in September. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. Now, a lot of the legal concerns here are around a 1974 Impoundment Control Act, which, trust me, I'm not going to get into, but I don't want to do that to anyone. But importantly, it requires congressional approval for withholding funds.
Yep.
And that congressional approval has not gotten there. The executive should not have this power. They're doing it anyway, so we'll see how that works out. There is some states kind of that are losing, a lot of states are losing upwards of kind of $100 million or that kind of thing. California risks losing almost $1 billion out of this, just being, one of the most populous states and having a lot of kids. They are really affected by this. The Trump administration has been doing a number on California. My God.
Yeah.
I really do feel bad for folks in California. That's one set of funding cuts, this $6 billion.
Yep.
There is another $12 billion that is now that the way is clear, the Supreme Court's given them the okay, that the administration is looking to pull from the Department of Education. And again, this is going to have countrywide effects. Now, the way that Linda McMahon is kind of explaining these cuts is that they are reflecting a plan to responsibly wind down the Department of Education. So basically what she's saying is, yeah, we're going to make these cuts and then we're going to keep cutting until it's all gone, but we're going to do it more gradually. So don't worry about it. So they've gutted the civil rights protections. There's actually an Office for Civil Rights within the Department of Education that enforces anti-discrimination laws. They've faced a 35% cut, which is around $49 million. The administration, of course, claiming that this Office for Civil Rights promoted radical transgender ideology and...
that radical less than 1% of the population. Those devils.
I know. They get up to so much for being less than 1% of the population. Like, I wish I had that kind of go-get-em attitude, where it's just like, yeah, I can single-handedly destroy this country.
If I had the resources of a trans woman, my God, I'd take over the planet.
Yeah. So there's also, they're getting rid of what are called block grants, which is kind of consolidating programs. There's 18 kindergarten to grade 12 programs that they're kind of merging together and cutting a bunch of money out of. And so that kind of merging paves the way for these block grants. And it's seeming like they might divert those funds that they take from these programs to private school vouchers. So the American system is quite unusual in the way that they do education. Because of this almost natural American distrust of government-run education, over the last 50 years or so, a type of school named a charter school has become very popular. Charter schools aren't quite private schools. They are and they aren't. They are run outside of school boards.
They're run for profit, right?
They are run for profit, but they are publicly funded. So they basically get their funding per head, per student, right? The government gives the money per student. So they kind of siphon money out of that public system because of this. And charter schools are quite unique because they don't really follow the curriculum of the state. They're able to kind of get their curriculum approved separately from that. So they can be very different in what they teach and how they teach than a state school. And a lot of charter schools are really good. A lot of charter schools are really bad, and a lot of them are just mid. It seems to have a wider range of outcomes than your normal public school.
Busting out the Gen Z words today, I see.
Like, I'm hip with the kids.
Look, these mid charter schools ain't got no RIAs, okay?
So There's also, of course, your classic private schools, which are the ones where you are paying tuition.
Yeah.
And you go.
Do you not pay tuition at charter schools?
No.
Okay, I thought you did. Okay, that's interesting.
No. So yeah, charter schools are the for-profit option that runs parallel to the public school system, but doesn't actually cost parents anything. It just costs
just the tax money.
Taxpayers in general.
Okay, so SpaceX to NASA.
Yeah, that's actually the perfect way. Yeah, hopefully the kids don't explode. But I don't know. Some of those charter schools are pretty bad.
Yeah, they might not explode, but they will be full of holes.
Yeah. So charter schools are actually kind of a winner in this big round of cuts. Yeah. They are actually getting a funding boost of to expand their operations, and there's actually a pending Supreme Court case that may force states to fund religious charter schools, which to this point they have not had to do.
Yeah.
So that is still kind of winding its way through. We'll see how that ends up. Where we're kind of finally getting to here is a point where the Department of Education very soon is going to be too small, too demoralized, and too defunded to be functional in any way. And while that isn't going to close your kid's school, it's not going to immediately, make you have to choose between a private school or a charter school because your public school is now, a war zone or something. What it does immediately is make it so much harder for, part of underrepresented groups, kids with disabilities, any of the vulnerable cohorts, for them to get equitable education. It's also going to free states' hands in a lot of places. So I'm talking about the South. I'm just going to be honest here. Let's talk about the Confederacy. It's going to allow those states, if they wish, to get away with very discriminatory policy because there will be no enforcement. So it's not something that is an immediate catastrophe, but it's a slow burning catastrophe, right? It's going to affect outcomes, 5, 10, 15 years down the line, because these kids can't get the supports that they need, and they're losing programs that for a lot of kids and in a lot of communities keep kids out of trouble, keep them out of jail, right? Like after school programs. So before we end, just another piece of bad news. This gives me a good segue. So those Medicaid cuts that are coming through the big, beautiful bill. Yeah. Medicaid is one of the largest funders of the American education system. And it doesn't immediately make sense until you realize that anything that you're talking about where kids are getting support for their disabilities, kids are getting Medicaid coverage because, no free ride even for kids. So you have to have coverage. And as their parents get kicked off, the kids get kicked off, and there's nothing there to pick up the slack. So when all of that Medicaid funding is pulled out of schools and all of the Department of Education money is pulled out of schools, what you're going to see is states struggling so hard to try and make up that shortfall because states do not have the power that the federal government has to take on debt. Mm-hmm. States have basically a harder debt ceiling. Congress loves to just raise the debt ceiling federally. They can do that. States cannot. So their only options are generally to raise taxes, which is, communism, or cut programs. So vital programs like after school, like SNAP meals, SNAP, the food program, also huge cuts. Guess what? SNAP funds a lot of food programs at schools, breakfasts, lunches for kids who can't afford them. Those are going, right? What you're left with is schools that are less welcoming and less able to offer what kids need, not because they don't want to, but because it's all been clawed away from them.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, I think, just absolutely wild to see, because if you look at this, even from the cold, dead eyes of an economist, I'm kidding, economists. Your eyes are only
black
dead.
eyes
They're not
like
cold.
a doll's eyes. They roll over white.
Education is such a powerful tool for nations to grow economically, to grow their GDP. On average, even 1 or 2 more years of school, and a 1-year increase in average education correlates with 2.5 to 5% higher GDP per capita. Like, even if we're just looking at people at numbers, as numbers, this isn't a good investment, right? Taking this money from your schools. And this is going to show itself down the road. It's going to start showing itself immediately, but it's going to be so much worse in 5-10 years, right? You're going to have so many more kids who cannot complete their education because of these things that you've taken away from them. And it's absolutely, I think, indefensible, quite frankly.
I agree. Malcolm X said education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And they're robbing your children of this. For any potentially hate-listening conservatives or looking down on us listening centrists, they're robbing your children. Or maybe you're young. They're robbing you. Like, this is what they're taking away. And they're two-faced about it, because if we remember, during Trump's first administration, the Department of Education was run by Betsy DeVos, somebody who had many investments in charter schools, private schools, wanted to offer vouchers, wanted to start getting, regular families caught up in loans to pay for tuition to go to private schools. And here is another quote about education from Betsy DeVos: "Education is a closed system, a closed industry, a closed market." So that tells you exactly what they think of it. And at the end of the day, as you had said earlier, there's this sort of Republican distrust of any kind of education run by the government. But you're telling me that charter schools get their money from the government. So if the Department of Education is gone and the public schools all become charter schools, or what have you, the charter schools start to become more of a thing, they're going to be subject to a government oversight to get their funding, because if they're teaching stuff that the government, much like a Trump government, which is very petty, does not like, they won't get funding. So at what point do we not realize that this is all exactly what they're afraid of?
Yeah, there's a disconnect, I think, with charter schools, because there's that private aspect of them. There's almost this independent streak, right, where they're not part of the school boards. They're that American ingenuity that, they saw a problem and they opened a school to fix it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And let's be frank, a lot of charter schools have far more either political or religious affiliations than public schools.
And look, if I went to a charter school and they took me, little Josh, on a field trip to a museum that had statues of dinosaurs fighting Roman soldiers in a coliseum, I would have been thrilled. But it's not good for young people to see that. It's not good for them.
No, it's not. Yeah, I think that's gonna about wrap things up for us today. It's always sunny in the politics of America, folks. Yeah, but we do really appreciate you listening, and I think educating ourselves and educating our friends and family about what is going on in the American educational system is really important, and I'm glad you stuck with us for this one. Thanks so much, and on behalf of myself and Josh, we'll see you next week.
We should do like a happy special episode where we do like the biography of AOC or something.
Someday.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating on your podcast platform of choice, and tell all your friends. The Politics of New America is hosted by Nathan Stone and produced by Josh Carmody. You can follow us on Blue Sky at Politics New America.
This has been a Haunted Mouse production. Cut that out.